of money this year on your taxes if you become a contractor. That's because under the GOP's tax plan, folks can deduct 20% of their taxable income if they're independent contractors instead of company employees. But that, of course, could also mean that you lose your company's benefits like health insurance. Let's bring in Daniel Geltrude. He is a certified public accountant and a business and finance analyst. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Molly.
So I want to kick things off. Does the way this new tax code, the reform, the way it's written, does it incentivize people to essentially leave their employers and strike out on their own, and exactly how would it work?
Absolutely it does. So the pass-through entities, like being a sole proprietor or being a partnership or an S-corp, allows you to pass through your income, but the new tax law has created a deduction of 20% of your income. It's a free deduction. So right there is the incentive for people to go from being an employee to being an independent contractor using a pass-through entity type.
Now, 20%, that's a big deduction. So I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, heck, maybe I'll think about that. That could save me up $10,000, $15,000 when they do the math in the end. But at the same time, striking out on your own can be pretty expensive, especially when it comes to health care. If you've got to pay for that on the side instead of getting it through your employer, right? So there are things to think about. Yes,
there's certainly an offset here, because if you're no longer an employee, then you're no longer going to get those employee benefits like medical, like overtime, like sharing in profit sharing plans if your employer offers that. Or how about this? If you lose your job, if you're an independent contractor, you can't collect unemployment. So there's definitely an offset to that 20% benefit, and you really have to sit back and think about, is it the right move?
Who would it be the right move for? Like, who should think about this? Who will it really benefit?
Well, the IRS has very specific rules about this. So it's not just, oh, I want to become an independent contractor, or a company deciding we're not going to have employees anymore. We're just going to have independent contractors. So it really comes down to what's called control, the control rule. That's what the IRS uses as a guideline. If the employer controls the employee, whether they're classified as an employee or an independent contractor, you're supposed to be an employee. That's it.
And how does this affect employers potentially?
Well, it's a windfall for employers, because generally speaking, when you have independent contractors working for you instead of employees, because of the things we just talked about, the employer saves all those costs, which means they can be a lot more competitive in their pricing and more profitable at the same time. So this is a windfall and an incentive for an employer to try this. But then again, the IRS, this is not something that they want to see happen, and they're going to look to enforce this a lot more stringently than they have in the past.
What about just society as a whole? If we see more people being independent contractors, that means fewer people are on, getting the traditional benefits that they would see at a big corporation. Is it good? Is it bad? I mean, is it simply a matter of freedom and choice?
It's really a shift. If you're an employee and there's certain advantages and disadvantages to being an employee, that's what that is. And if you're an independent contractor, you have the same offsets. I don't particularly think that this is going to have a huge impact per se on society. I don't think everyone is just going to automatically run out and say to their employer, hey, listen, I want to be an independent contractor from now on. I think it will happen, but again, I must warn those people, if they're going to do it, that the IRS has specific rules, and they're going to be looking for people to do this.
So that was going to be my final question. What would your advice be for people that are listening to this segment, listening to you talk and going, man, 20%? That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, that's quite a carrot hanging out there. But if you're already an employee, it's not really something that you can that should be your guideline. It's not something to say all of a sudden, you know what, I'm going to be an independent contractor now. Let that be your guide. And if you're already an employee, my recommendation is play it safe and stay that way.
All right, Daniel Geltrude, thank you so much. It'll be interesting. We'll see what 2018 holds.
Thank you.
All right, and today marks